Simpra Inventory Authorization module. In Simpra Inventory, you can create user groups under the Authorization module. Authorization can be made in certain groups, and you can also create and define your users to the system. In order to make the relevant definition, under the Management panel, we click on the Authorization tab. In the list that appears in the window that opens, we see the name, surname, email address, authorization group, predefined store and approval level of our users who have been defined to the system so far. In the panel above, our user groups appear. First, let's start our definitions by creating a new user group and making authorization definitions within it. In order to create a new user group, we press the Add User Group button on the right side. Let's say our user group is called Cost. After writing the name of our group, as it appears at the bottom, if we want them to have authorization in which of the fields, we click on the parameters next to them. For example, when the user comes to the home page, if we want the user to see the home page, but we do not want him to see any income information on the main screen, we can make a definition in this way, or we can authorize all of them completely. We choose which operations can be done in the Administration panel. I give an example in the master data. When we press the left side, all are selected. But let's say that the relevant user cannot define a stock card. Therefore, as soon as we unauthorize the stock card, all authorizations under the user master data, except stock cards. In the same way, we can configure authorizations in the purchasing module as we want. Let's authorize the entire purchasing, authorize the reports, and also enter the settings. We also authorize the stock movement section. In addition to module authorizations, for example, authorization can also be made to recipe groups. The user we will select can access recipe groups with certain criteria. He/she cannot see other recipes in the system. As an example from here, we have authorized the first 5 groups. We did not authorize the semi-products at the bottom. Therefore, our user will not be able to view the recipes linked to semi-product in the system. In the same way, we can configure the reports as we wish. In the Report Information section, all reports defined in the transaction can be configured as we want, whether we want to see this report or not. For example, if we do not want our user to see the main definition report, when we remove the relevant parameter, our user cannot view the report in this area. In the List Group section, we have lists defined in the system. If you remember before, lists such as Inventory List, Request List, Purchase List, Transfer List. If we want, we can add lists to these lists that we define for the users. We can authorize the user to reach, view, or perform actions, or we can remove the if parameter if we don't want the user to see this list at all. For example, this user can only, in my chosen field of interest, so that it can trade with a list, then it can only display them. Finally, the Price Access section comes. Depending on our request in all of the modules that appear at the bottom in the price area, we can disable the user's authority to see prices. For example, it can view the home page, but as soon as we remove the dashboard authority, the user cannot access any price or numerical value. Or you can access it in the purchasing section or, for example, in the recipes section, but you can't view prices, or if we don't want the user to see the costs, we can disable the related parameter. It is enough to remove it. And after these definitions are completed, by pressing the Add User button at the bottom right, our user group influence process is completed. As you can see, we now have the user group we created as Cost on the screen. Now we need to add a user connected to this group to the system, as we can change the authorization group of our currently defined users. For example, we have a request user here. As soon as we press the 3 dots and say Edit, from the User Group field, we can define the cost authorization we just defined here to our user. Now let's define a new user as an example. We press the Add User button to add a new user. The email address of our user needs to be entered into the system. For example, we have defined this as the mail address of our cost user. We write his name. We write his last name. A phone number. This place already comes automatically. Let's give our password as 123456. I select the predefined language option as English. I connect it to the code group as a cost. We leave this as 0 because it will not be included in any approval mechanism. In the Store Authorization section, you can authorize a user to the store you want, or you can also allow them to see all stores. When we come to the relevant field, when we look down with the arrow, we see all our defined stores. For example, if we want our user to see the bar, kitchen, and main store, but we don't want them to see our production store, we can remove the parameter of the relevant warehouse. With the star on the right side, we select which predefined store we want this user to access first. After the relevant definition is made, we say OK. At the bottom, in terms of transfer store security, we may not have authorized one of the above stores in our user, but if we want him to be able to make a transfer to that store, the user must also have the relevant authorizations defined in the Transfer Store Selection section. If we do not want the relevant user to transfer a product from the bar to the kitchen, we need to authorize the kitchen. Parameter is sufficient for this process. After all of our definitions are finished, click the Add User button below. We complete our related definition process